What I love most about Blue Lock is how it completely breaks away from the typical anime and manga tropes, and it never lets you forget it. From the very start, the series constantly reminds us that this isn't your typical sports story, and nor is that more obvious than with its main character, Isagi Yoichi. He is plain looking, he has no special physical gifts, and at first glance, nothing about him really stands out. Even characters like Deku, for example, who initially seem to fit that category, tend to acquire some sort of overpowered ability that lets him be on par with those around him. Or take Hinata from Haikyuu, another underdog protagonist, but at least he has a very innately high jumping ability that allows him to compete against those around him. But Isagi, he doesn't have super strength like Baro, insane speed like Chigiri, or some freakish scoring ability like Nagi. The most special thing about him is that he's not so special, and Blue Lock makes that crystal clear from the beginning when it eliminates Kira almost immediately, the one character who actually looks and acts like your typical sports anime protagonist. It's the series' way of telling us that guy, the one who fits the mold, he's out because this is not his story. Instead, we're left with Isagi, who, let's be real, is kind of boring in the traditional sense. The only other time we see a protagonist this plain and unremarkable is when, However, it's possible that in trying to break the typical protagonist mold, the creator may have gone a bit too far, to the point that Isagi ends up feeling underwhelming rather than groundbreaking. Instead of being a genius hiding in plain sight, he often comes across as a character who needs blatant plot armor to succeed. This series constantly bends over backwards with mental gymnastics to rationalize how he keeps up with players who are faster, stronger, and more skilled than him. Rather than proving he's true to the best, it sometimes feels like the story is forcing us to believe that. And for that reason, a popular nickname has came around the character, Plotsagi. In this video, I'll explain why I believe that moniker unfortunately perfectly fits this character. As mentioned, Isagi lacks any explosive personal attributes. He's not really fast or strong or even really gifted compared to other players. He doesn't have any unique skill or physical trait that will allow him to break through defenses by himself. He's not like someone like say Bachira who can dribble past multiple defenders, or someone like Nagi who can receive the ball from any player. Even if it's a weak or strong pass, he will find a way to trap it and score into a goal. Isagi needs to rely strictly on his teammates to create opportunities. Even to push the ball up the court, he has to rely on someone like Toshi Rin or Nanase or Hiyori Yo to link up with him. Now, a common retort to that could be that, well, there's other players who have their partners, right? You have Nagi who works with Reo, you have Loki who works well with Charles Cavalier, etc, etc. The only issue is that even without them, they're still self-sufficient. Additionally, you might argue, well, there's teams that go around a player, right? Kind of like Baro and Ubers. Now, I may have criticized Baro in the past, however, I have also stated that in a system like Uber's, Baro can shine. Why? Because he is capable enough to carry the offense on his own. If you were to put Isagi in there, he would not be able to carry the Uber's offense. Another example would be someone like Bachira, who plays on FC Barça. Yes, they've lost every single game because at the end of the day, it is a team sport despite the trope of egoism within the story. However, he is self-sustaining and able to create opportunities for himself. Now you tell me, if Isagi could only devour Otoya and Sendao, do you think he'd be popping goals? And this is where the moniker of Plotsagi just fits in perfectly. I mean, there's only one other well-known striker outside of the Blue Lock that played in the Neo Egoist League, that being Michael Kaiser. Isn't it very plot convenient that Isagi just so happens to be the only main character that plays with him? Isn't it plot convenient that he plays with someone that he can quote-unquote devour? Which actually leads me to my next point. Due to the fact that Isagi has no personal attributes that he can rely on, his entire style revolves around using players that are better than him. From the very beginning, we've seen that Isagi, because of the plot, has been blessed to have strong teammates around him. Strangely, Team Z had Kunigami, Chigiri, and Bachira, who are very good individualistic scorers, surrounded by decent role players. Additionally, let's look at this goal against the U20 team. Kudos to him, he did score, but two major issues with that is one, again, plot convenience. He just so happened to have learned that a day before the actual U20 match, and two, that is a concept that could really easily be taught to anybody on that field. But again, ask him to try to copy other players' abilities, their dribbling, their passing skills, or their ability to control the ball, and that is where again Isagi can't compare. Listen, here's an interesting thought experiment. Go ahead and send all the best strikers back to the first stage of Blue Lock. Now go ahead and shuffle the teams and make sure that everybody's teams is more or less evenly distributed. Do you think Isagi, without playing with the top strikers, is going to be able to carry a bunch of scrubs to victory? Because I have no doubt that Baro is going to pop off regardless, Nagi is going to go crazy regardless, even Chigiri, who strangely was kind of quiet in the first selection, is probably going to go off too. Same with Rin, same with Shadao, and there's a strong theory that even Corona Jin managed to be a top striker in his stratum. I am honestly sweating if I'm Isagi, because I would not know if he's able to somehow pass again. Think about it. Who is he going to devour? Imagine he has to devour this motherfucker.
Yeah, that brother's starving.
Can you say with certainty that Isagi gets through the first stage again? Now let's say he does somehow. Second selection. He got Baro and Nagi on his team because through sheer luck or quote-unquote plots in Isagi's favor, he went against Baro alongside Nagi, and Baro's teammate was Nishioka. Imagine if Baro's teammate in that match was somewhat decent. Imagine it was, let's say, Karasu or even Otoya. I'm sorry, they're not winning that. Because the normal 2v2 was essentially a battle of who was going to be less worse, Nishioka or Isagi. I mean, congrats to Isagi, he managed to beat Nishioka, but that's it. Now, third selection. Through sheer coincidence, he got to pick Nanase and Hiyori-Yo, two of the nicest people in Blue Lock that were okay playing around him. But again, replace them with anybody else in that situation. He is screwed. In fact, he would have been lucky to make the bench. Now let's go to Neo Egoist League. I know I already talked a little bit about this, but the fact that he made that goal in the U20 is the reason he even got to play in the first game. And from there, he was slowly able to devour the team. But mind you, the coach Noah literally set up to be 50-50 between Blue Lock and Bastard Munchin by the second game, because he wanted to test Michael Kaiser. And regardless, every single game, despite the fact that it was mostly Blue Lock by the second half of games, Michael scored. Regardless of who was on his team, Michael Kaiser got to score no matter what. Isagi didn't get to score until the majority of the team were Blue Lock players who were playing around him one way or another. And again, all of this isn't to really disparage Isagi. There is a lot of good about him, but we really can't deny the insane amount of flaw that surrounds him. And this is because Isagi has no ability to completely dominate on his own, which leads me to my next point. Blue Lock initially framed Ego as an individual dominance, as someone being able to carry his team no matter what and no matter who is around him, he alone is able to carry the game. However, it seems that the author is constantly moving the goalpost in order to justify Isagi's victory. He constantly redefines what the term ego means. Originally, I was going to go through every single example that he mentioned, but honestly, this image is plenty. The fact that you need an entire compass to really show off what I'm talking about should be enough evidence of mental gymnastics at play. It's pretty obvious that Blue Lock was meant to create strikers like Baro or Bachira. And sure, maybe there's always some level of adaptation, because on one hand, you do want to add some level of nuance. For example, I think it's very, very interesting how we see that Isagi is able to essentially sell his soul for victory, but when Nagi does it, it doesn't really work because of the difference between a fast learner and a true prodigy. Those are interesting topics, but that's really about it. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say. His IQ/metavision is his unique trait. The only issue with this is that this would insinuate that he is so much more intelligent than everybody around him to the point that can compensate for physical traits. For example, it's not enough to say that he is smarter than Itoshi Rin, for example, but he is so much smarter than him that it compensates for every other part that is lacking physically. Even Nagi points out that Itoshi Rin and Isagi in terms of intelligence are about the same, but Itoshi Rin completely dominates him in every other physical trait. Again, you're telling me that Isagi got so much better to the point that his intelligence not only surpasses Rin, but also enough that it compensates for everything else? What about players like Michael Kaiser, who also have metavision, who are also high IQ players, Karasu, Reo, all these people who initially were a lot better than Isagi? Again, I'm not saying that Isagi is straight cheeks either. Compare him to someone like Lemon or Kuon, who physically are stronger than him, I could still see him realistically beating them because the difference isn't anything too crazy. But again, when you compare him to someone like Shidara Ryusei, who is doing bicycle kicks, Baro, who's charging in, holding off two defenders while scoring a goal, you see Nagi trap the ball anywhere and score, you're supposed to tell me that Isagi is able to keep up with all of this by above average critical thinking skills? That is to say, he can definitely be a great midfielder. He can read the floor really well and make decent passes. I know I said that his physical traits are lacking, but that's only compared to the other top dogs. Against randoms or people who are fodder, I could see Isagi being better than them. However, amongst everybody in Blue Lock, trying to convince me that Isagi is capable of being the best striker, I'm sorry, but that is just straight plot convenience. Therefore, the only fair thing to call Isagi is indeed plot Sagi. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. A huge shout out to anybody who disagrees with me but has chosen to watch the full video. It actually speaks volumes. I don't care if it's just an anime opinion. A lot of people are now willing to listen to a 12-minute video on an opinion they do not agree about. And if you disagree with me, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. And yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the last video didn't get a lot of subscriptions, so I must now face the punishment.
I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get!
Please, Diddy, be gentle.